I thought it was about time I brought another company profile. We're going to talk about a company that is ingrained in modern F1, a company that everyone is very, very familiar with right now. But of course, we forget that there was a time that these guys weren't even remotely involved in the sport. So we're going to have a little history lesson. We're going to go back and look at where Red Bull have touched Formula One, where it began, and how it's played out for him. And of course, before we start this video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe on it. Follow me on all my socials if you enjoy my stuff and what I do. And actually, I do have a prop for this. I bought a Red Bull specifically for this video. I don't even like Red Bull, so yeah. I rate the little detail, to be fair, on the opener. They've got the little Red Bull. If you go back to the first video of mine that really pops, the Rich Energy versus Red Bull, I actually preferred Rich Energy. It just tastes like liquefied sweets. You know, the ones that you get on a little bead chain. I've got it, so I might as well drink it. So of course, Red Bull is an energy drink. The company was founded in 1984 in Austria, although the actual product did not hit the shelves in Austria until 1987. Now, their very, very first move into sports sponsorship, which has since become just integral with the brand, was with Austrian ice hockey club EC Salzburg in that very same year, in 1987. And then their very, very first F1 connected sponsorship was a personal deal with Austrian driver Gerhard Berger in 1989. There's some great images of Gerhard posing with... You can see that the design has not changed. When you look at the photos and compare that to this, that the aesthetic of the product has not changed at all, which is pretty mad. And I think that's one of the big reasons that they've enjoyed so much success, because their product, again, at the time in 1989, there was nothing like it in terms of the presentation in the slim can with the blue and the silver. It turned heads, and that proved to be a very, very important thing. And in the same way that the packaging design hasn't changed, the livery design hasn't really changed much over the years, which again, as much as you could say it's boring, and I would say, like, I would like to see a bit more, evolution in the F1 car livery. It's become iconic. But the other big reason I think they've enjoyed so much success is that they've embedded themselves into the culture of the customers that they're trying to appeal to. Extreme sports was a massive thing for them. You've got BMX, skateboarding, motocross, cliff diving, air racing, snowboarding. And of course, you can include F1 in that. Any sport that isn't for the faint-hearted, Red Bull positioned themselves very much within that market and supported those sports. And again, it's like objectively true that they've been a massively successful company. They sold 7.5 billion cans in 2019, which is pretty much one for every single human on Earth. They do a Montesco meal deals, so I would be tempted if I actually like the product, which I don't, but they're clearly very successful, so who the am I? Now, on to Red Bull, specifically within F1. The history of the current team goes all the way back to 1988, where three times world champion Jackie Stewart's son Paul established Paul Stewart Racing. We're going right into the very, very fundamental beginnings of the team now. So Paul Stewart Racing entered into the British F3 Championships, and they had backing from Camel, who are a big American tobacco company, and they did pretty well. In the meantime, Red Bull's first ever presence on an F1 car itself came in form of sponsorship, not team ownership, and that was back in 1995 when they sponsored the Sauber F1 team. And this sponsorship lasted until 2004, and it kind of makes sense because, Sauber's a Swiss team. I know Red Bull's Austrian, but it's that same kind of part of Europe, so you can understand where that connection and where that's a 9-year sponsorship, so it was a long time. It's funny actually, isn't it? Because that Sauber also had Petronas or Petronas, whatever you want to pronounce it, sponsorship as well. Two of the biggest F1 sponsors started, cut their teeth with Sauber. So in 1996, 1 year after Sauber took on Red Bull as a main sponsor, Paul Stewart Racing mixed it up and they became Stewart Grand Prix and entered Formula One. Throughout their whole stint in Formula One, actually, as Stewart Racing, they only had 4 drivers, and 2 of them were daddies. You had Papa Magnussen, Jan, so Kevin Magnussen's old man, and you had Papa Verstappen as well, Jos, who also raced for Stewart. And then, of course, you had Rubens Barrichello and Johnny Herbert. I'm from the same place as Johnny Herbert, by the way. I really want to get him on a podcast and talk about Collier Row, because I think that'd be fun. Stewart didn't enjoy a lot of success. They won their sole Grand Prix in 1999 in Germany. It was a mad race. I watched the highlights in full when I was researching this video. Johnny Herbert won. It was a madness. It was crazy. It was equivalent to, Germany 2019 in terms of the level of scenes and just drivers coming off left, right and centre. There's obviously something about Hockenheim that just always delivers a madness. I think you can compare Stewart probably to a Toro Rosso, kind of mid to low table, occasionally pulls out a podium, and it will very, very occasionally win a race. And actually that 1999 season, they finished 4th in the Constructors, which is nothing to be, squirmed at. I mean, that's a decent performance. And it was so good that it led to Ford purchasing the Stewart F1 team and rebranding, because of course Ford at the time, even though I think Jaguar was owned by Tata now, put the Jaguar name on it because that was a Ford brand, and that's where the iconic green and HSBC Jaguar livery F1 car from the year 2000 was born. Now, unfortunately, again, it's not great news. The Jaguar team never got to that 4th. They never matched the level of achievement that Stewart, as a small independent team, really did. The highest they ever finished in the Constructors' Championship from 2000 to 2004 was 7th. So then in September 2004, Ford had enough and they put the team up for sale for $1, and Red Bull came in on the very, very last day of the sale and snapped the team up. Although the caveat for buying for $1 is that they had to spend or invest in the team $400 million over the next 3 years. So from 2005, the car was fully Red Bull liveried up. Red Bull owned the team. And over those first 4 years, so 2005, 6, 7 and 8, they were kind of finding their feet. They didn't finish above 5th in the Constructors' Championship, which was in 2007. But then 2009 came along, and what came along with that was Grand Prix winner with Toro Rosso, Sebastian Vettel. And this is when their fortunes started to change. The Red Bull would have won the 2009 season if it wasn't for the freak that was the Brawn GP. They almost caught them, but not quite. Finished 2nd in the Constructors in 2009. But then from 2010, we all know what happened. Sebastian absolutely dominated the 2010, 11, 12 and 13 seasons. Okay, dominated. It was tough for him. It wasn't like a clean sweep like it has been with some seasons with Lewis, and some seasons were more competitive than others. But ultimately, that Red Bull car was the best on the grid, and Seb was the best driver at the time. I think he was definitely, as much as kind of Lewis was in a weaker car, I think you can't argue with the fact that at that period of time, and people have hated on me because they think I don't like Seb. I do like Seb. I rate Seb. And I think at that period in his career, he was the best in F1 for no question in my mind. But then, of course, 2014 rolled along. That dominant period would not be seen again. Mercedes would very much take that baton, and Lewis would win the title with Mercedes. They may not have won the title in 2014, but they finished 2nd in the Constructors, which is fine. But then in 2015, they dropped like a stone down to 4th, which on the face of it doesn't sound that bad because where you think when they came from. But, that was behind Mercedes, Ferrari, and it was behind Williams. Williams finished 3rd in the Constructors, which when you look at them now, it's just like how the mighty can fall. And I think that's a good lesson to all these teams. And I'm sure everyone's learned from Williams' kind of lack of success recently and how badly they've fallen off. That can happen to any team. If you ain't on it and you ain't constantly innovating and delivering, these things can happen. Now, 2015 is where a lot of cages got rattled, should I say, because Red Bull put their, rather than immediately jumping on the drivers, which they had done in the past, they were very much like Renault is the issue. Renault powered the dominant Red Bull for those 4 years where Seb won consecutive titles, but Red Bull weren't impressed with the development, I guess. You might be top engine at one point, but if you don't continue innovating, you can always fall. And, Red Bull were very much like Renault were the issue. 2015 was their first winless season, 0 wins since 2008. And with Red Bull's newfound success, and again, they're not known for being patient as a team, unfortunately for them, they didn't really have any option. They had to run a Renault engine So what they did instead, which was really weird, because if you actually look into the official Red Bull engine supplier from 2016, 17 and 18 in those years, it's actually Tag Heuer, the watch brand. It was a Renault engine, but they were like, we're not putting the Renault name on the car, so we'll put Tag Heuer instead, which is really like playground nonsense, if you ask me. It seems really petty and fickle, but that's what happened. So technically Tag Heuer supplied the Red Bull engines in 2016, 17 and 18. And then of course, for everyone who's seen Drive to Survive, you've seen that, you know, with the Danny Rick transfer to Renault, there was a lot of like slide digs between Cyril and Christian. I'm team Cyril very much. As much as I love the drivers at Red Bull, I don't like Christian. I've said that before. And yeah, that was just another thing to add to the beef. So I think you need that, don't you? You need a bit of soap opera. You need a bit of, you know, a bit of clashing. I think it adds to the spectacle and the intrigue. But anyway, of course, we jump back to 2016. You know, they've just come off a really poor season. 2015, you've got Daniel Ricciardo and Kvyat, Kvyat the torpedo, at the helm, and the hatchet comes down very much on DK, on Daniel Kvyat. Max Verstappen makes the step up from Toro Rosso to Red Bull. And what does he do? He wins. He becomes the youngest Formula One race winner at 18 years and 227 days old. And the rest is history. Obviously, more recently, we've had the, you know, Gasly moving into the Red Bull and Daniel left and then Alex replacing him. We're all much more familiar with that. But yeah, in terms of the history of Red Bull, I think that's a pretty comprehensive coverage. But of course, be sure to let me know down in the comments below if there's any particular nuggets of information that I've missed out that other people would be interested to read. Most interesting comment, I'll be sure to pin at the very top. So there you go. What do I think of Red Bull? I rate the livery. I think the livery will be iconic in years to come. I think, you know, helmet is a bit of a helmet. I think Christian's a bit of a twat, and I love Alex, and I rate Max. I think Max will win the driver's title this year. I really do. I think it's going to be touch and go between him and Lewis, but yeah, I think they've got a great car. You know, word from testing is that Red Bull is looking planted. So once we do eventually get racing, I think they'll be very, very, very competitive with the Mercedes. I genuinely feel that there's, as much as I don't like Christian, he hates losing, and I think they are the team that are the most gutted and the most desperate to win, even more so than Ferrari, if you ask me. I just like the way their pits are always on point. I think there's a lot to be said for that. So that's my roundup on Red Bull. Thank you very much as ever for watching. Please don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to this video, follow me on Twitter and all my other socials down below, Discord, my website, all that fun stuff. Give it a look if you're interested. My name's been Tommo. This is the Tommo F1 YouTube channel. Thank you again for watching. Much, much, much appreciated in these weird ass times. Have a good one. Ta-da.